Hey guys, we're back and we're with another Porsche again. This one is an older one. This is the 993 Carrera S, and if you don't know much about the car, honestly, you're kind of the same boat as me, because up until a few days ago, I didn't really know much about it. I had to do my research. I'm not gonna lie, I did watch a Doug DeMuro video to learn a little bit about it, but this is it. It's a 993 Carrera S. This is kind of the predecessor to the GT3 RS, which is, you know, the car we all know and love now. Okay, so obviously in the 993 generation, there's obviously differences between how the cars look, but it's not as big of a difference as now, you know, with the 991. You can clearly tell what's what, but the big tells on this one is the three-piece wheels. So very cool wheels. Apparently these go for like 10 grand. The obviously gigantic spoiler right here. Once you look inside, it has these bucket seats, and no, they're not carbon fiber bucket seats like they are nowadays. They're just the old Porsche bucket seats, which are a lot narrower actually at the bottom, but they have a painted back, and I don't know if they all had a painted back, but this one has the same paint as the car, so it's kind of cool. It matches. You get the rear seat delete just like the GT3 RS's, and it just says Carrera RS on there. And you get the 993 interior. Very cool 6-speed transmission, very cool shifter, very comfortable actually, surprisingly, but you still get like power windows, but the doors are very stripped out to save weight. So I've actually never driven, other than this, you know, like an older 911. Probably the oldest I've done is maybe like a 996. So it's gonna be very cool to see what the car is like. Very new experience to me. I was shocked actually how easy it is to drive. But yeah, let's go drive it. I'll see what I think of it. So far I like it, but yeah, I really want to learn this car. And because this is not a car I know much about, it's actually gonna be cool that I'm gonna be really learning about it over the next few days. I'm gonna take it to a few car meets and stuff. So I'm actually gonna put 2 videos out with this car. One is gonna be this review, and one is gonna be like a vlog with the, you know, just, you know, whatever I do with it, going to car meets, whatever we end up doing over the weekend. But yeah, let's see what I think of it. Hey guys, so we're in the 993 Carrera RS. Right away, this thing feels kind of familiar to me, because even though I haven't driven any 911s from this era, I've driven the 959, and the shifter kind of feels similar, but the biggest similarity is the clutch. The clutch is like, I believe it's floor mounted, so it feels very different from modern cars, which you gotta really get used to, kind of your foot going down rather than in. But once you get used to it, the car is actually very, very easy to drive. It's not too bad at all. Okay, so this is the predecessor to the GT3 RS. So you'd expect this thing to be like a hardcore, uncomfortable, very like shaky type of car. To be fair, it's not really that. So as like a track car, you'd expect this thing to be very shaky, just not very comfortable, not very easy to drive. But man, it's so easy to drive. It doesn't feel like the track car you would think it is. You know, you see a big spoiler, you see that, you think just immediately, oh yeah, it's all about weight reduction, and it's all about this, and it's all about that. Like, this car is definitely like a car you could drive every day. This is easier to drive than a 997 GT3 RS. This is a light clutch, steering is pretty light, shifter is very light, very smooth, and it's in a very comfortable position too. The one thing is the seats here are the old bucket seats, and it's a weird design, because the bottom holds you very tight, so your legs are kind of put together, and it's just not as comfortable in the bottom, but you have a ton of space in the back. I can move my arms around, no problem. It doesn't hold me really in that way. So honestly, you just gotta get used to the bottom of the seat. Other than that, you could honestly drive this for a long period of time. The one thing that's kind of bothering me on a day like today, this thing does have AC, but unfortunately it is a very bad AC. It's not an AC you'd expect to get in a Porsche. More like an AC you'd expect to get in a Countach. I am sweating completely, and this one has no tint, so it's kind of making it a little bit worse. But yeah, overall I haven't pushed the car at all yet, so performance wise I'm not too sure. The drivability is a lot easier than I thought it would be to drive. I thought it would be a slightly hard car to drive, but surprisingly, you know, you can just get in and go. It took me no time to get used to it. I really like it, and you do feel like you're in something special, because you have these doors that don't have pockets or anything in them to kind of save weight. These bucket seats definitely do make it feel special, but then the steering wheel kind of feels like the steering wheel from a regular Porsche. Regular gauge. It's just a regular 993 interior. Obviously you have the rear seat delete, but other than that, it's nothing really too crazy, too special, because nowadays those GT3 RSs are just so much different than any other 911. This is kind of cool, because it's still almost like a regular daily driver, but with a bit more like oomph to it. Okay, let's go. We're going to be able to get a little bit of speed now. We're in second. Push it a little bit. 4,000, 5,000. Shift up. It's pretty good. So 3.8 liter engine, I believe just under 300 horsepower, which nowadays that sounds like a lot, but back in the day it was a good amount. And this car is like, the 993s kind of look beefy, especially this with a big wing, it looks beefy. But man, like this car is tiny, it's light. So 300 horsepower for a car like this is plenty. You really don't need more. And again, this is like, it's not the technology and the suspension and all that we have nowadays. So you don't want to throw 500-600 horsepower in a car like this. It's gonna be, it might be a little much. This is kind of the perfect amount for what this car can handle. You feel like you can kind of give it everywhere, but you don't have to be too careful of the car losing it. Yeah, because it's not like this, even though I say it's a GT3 RS predecessor, it's not like as tight and as stiff as that. Like the steering isn't as direct, not at all. The steering feels more like maybe an old M3, because there's a lot of wiggle room. You know, I can do this and nothing really happens. You got to really turn the wheel for anything to happen. It doesn't feel like it wants to take very, very sharp turns out of nowhere like a GT3 RS would. But you could definitely do it better than, you know, an average car. But I don't know if I would say this is a track car. I think this is just a little bit more of an aggressive road car. But man, it's good. And everything is easy. I've noticed in like a lot of cars that are older, when you're on a rev match and you flip the throttle, it takes more to get the revs up. This one just almost like a new car, just the revs jump up, not a problem with the rev match, not a problem for anything like that. It is very surprisingly easy to drive. That's like my main takeaway from this car. It's crazy easy to drive. It doesn't feel like you're driving a $500,000 car, which is kind of what it is. But definitely once you look at it, you do get the $500,000 car look. Here it is. So pretty tight turn. A little bit of body roll. That's the thing. It's not like the stiffest suspension like a GT3 RS, right? It's more of like a Carrera type suspension, so it's like a Carrera with a bit more, right? That's the RS. But yeah, I honestly really like it. Let's keep driving and see what we think about it later on. So my camera mount thing broke for the car, so I'm gonna have to hold it right now. But I've been noticing something else that I really, really like in the car. So I did say it's very easy to drive, but it's like, you drive a car like this, you kind of expect it to be harder to drive. So pretty much what I really, really, really like about this is, you know, you're driving this like almost race car thing, you know, classic 90s 911, but you know, rev matching, everything is just so easy on this car, but it feels like it shouldn't be. So it makes you feel like such a good driver, even if you're just the most, you know, the most regular, the most average driver there can be. You still get kind of a lot of satisfaction from, you know, from just changing gears, driving it around. You know, the steering wheel is a little heavy enough to make you feel like you work for it, but not too heavy where it's going to be a little too tiring and you're not going to like driving it in traffic. Like, it's kind of like the perfect amount of like driver involvement, but then also kind of easy type of drive. Okay, so I've been driving this car for a little bit more now, and I'm getting a lot more used to it, a lot more feel to it. And I think the biggest part of this car is kind of just like the look of it. If you look from here, people think it's a GT2, which is, you know, a multi-million-dollar car, but it's kind of like a narrower version of that, but you still get that GT2 wing with the intakes at the end. So one of my favorite parts of the car is when you drive and you look in your mirror, all you can see is the intake right here on the spoiler, which makes you think you're in a 993 GT2, even though honestly this is like, it's not just as cool, but it's definitely up there. Just gives it a very special feeling when you're driving it. I'm absolutely in love with this thing, and it looks so badass. Okay, so two things that I'm starting to really rethink right now is, one is my whole statement about there being AC before. I really don't think there's AC in this car. But also, I thought this car was gonna be super low key. I thought it's like only if you know, which, yeah, like the people that actually know what it is do really freak out. But like the amount of compliments I got with this car is crazy. Like, I didn't think people were actually gonna look at this car so much. There's a ton of old 911s driving around. I don't know if it's the wing or what it is, but a bunch of like non-car people would give me crazy compliments about the car non-stop everywhere I go. Okay, so yeah, I kind of had the full day to drive the car and kind of get a feel of what I like about it, what I don't like about it. So, you know, I started the day off being like, I'm expecting this to be like a hardcore track car, like a GT3 RS predecessor, where that is kind of what it is, but it's not really that. This is kind of more old school, more driver involvement, less about caring about track times and cutting every millisecond of everything. This is a car that's just meant to be fun to drive and just more aggressive and more fun to drive than the regular 993 Carrera. Not necessarily, I think, to cut track times and stuff. It's just literally to get more enjoyment than the regular one, which is, I think, the way cars should be. And I actually really like that type of philosophy. I feel like everybody gets too worked up over numbers and all that, and then you kind of lose the drivability of the cars. So yeah, like, I'm really enjoying driving it. The one other thing is, I taking back the AC thing. So what I think happened is, I think the car does have AC. I think just this one doesn't work. But whatever, you know, it gives them more character. But I've been driving it around and really getting the enjoyment of it now. So it's about 1 a.m. I think. And I've been just driving around my neighborhood, and there's, you know, nobody out, so the roads are completely empty, so I get to actually drive the car. I'm not even pushing it, but it's just the fact that I don't have to go and stop in traffic not all the time. I can just kind of drive the car, feel the car. It has such a smooth shifter. Everything is very easy, but it still feels very old school. So it's rewarding, but not too difficult at the same time. And honestly, I've had my AirPods on, just listening to music, even though I know people are gonna guilt me saying, "Oh, you should listen to the car." Honestly, like, I've just had such a good time driving this car around, listening to my music, but just kind of feeling the car out. There's no screens, there's no electronics, nothing to distract you. It's just you literally powering this machine. And it's the greatest feeling to drive something like that. It's very simple, but it's kind of all you, and it just feels good. You don't get that feeling in a lot of new cars. But on the bright side, you know, these cars, as much as they're good to drive and all that, most people aren't really gonna drive them. Most of these cars will sit in collections, and people will look at them more. And the nice thing I like about this is a 993 Carrera is a good looking car. But this one, you look at this in your collection, you know it's not a regular car. You know this is a special piece. It's not the car you see every day. I mean, you look at the 3-piece wheels, the spoiler, you just know you have something special. And, you know, obviously it kind of looks a bit like the GT2, which is a very special car, but this is just not intimidating. You can take this out. This car is meant to be driven, and it feels solid, and it's so good. Easy shifter, comfortable car, but it's such a good looking car. I think this is actually a really great car. And obviously, last air-cooled car, which is one of the biggest things, that's going to be a big part of this car's value in the future. But I mean, just look at this thing at night with the lights on. I kept all the interior lights on, and it just, you know, old school as it gets, but it's still usable, and I love that. So yeah, I found that this car is like a prime example of me taking a car that honestly I don't know much about, which I was doing that with BMWs before, and kind of driving it and getting to know it while driving it, and getting to know it through talking to people that know more than me about the car and are more educated than me about the car, that can kind of teach me a little bit. And this car makes sense, and the whole hype around 993s, not only is the last air-cooled cars, I feel like the way they drive, the way everything is, how it's just very simple, just you in the car, but not too hard where you have to do too much work that you're really going to think about taking it out, because you don't know if you want to do the work. Like this, I could honestly drive every day. It really wouldn't be that bad. So I do get the whole hype around this car. I think it's worth it. I think this car is going to keep going up. It's very usable, and I feel like it's car, even in 50 years from now, is going to be a reliable car to drive that you can just take out. And a lot of these classic supercars are not that easy, so I think there's not really much competition to this. So, you know, so far from what I've driven the car, I absolutely love it. I think it's a great car. Tune in for the next video. We're taking some car shows, doing some stuff around the weekend with it. But yeah, as for my review of it, I absolutely love it. I don't really have anything bad to say about it. Build quality is really good for 1995, I think it is. But yeah, the only thing is the AC doesn't work, but that's just on this one specifically. But yeah, that's it. So I'll see you guys in the next video.